Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to Ask NK. Today we're looking at the new geometry node, which is now part of the main Blender development branch. Now there are certain things that have changed since this was built, and we're going to talk about it. Now if you remember previously when we started talking about the whole node thing, there was an update to that and it wasn't called geometry node, and this is beginning to make sense because before it was the particle node and now we're seeing a geometry node. But now looking at how this development is going, it seems like the particle node is fusing with what we have right now as the geometry node. And owing to this, certain tutorials you probably have seen before are now going to be considered as a bit outdated. Not really outdated, but just a bit outdated, and that's why we're making this update video for you. So how do you get started with this? First off, let's just scale that down, move this over to here, and we would make a simple grid. Now before now, how you could work with this was very simple, and working with this just entailed selecting the object that you want, going over to where you have your modifier, click down here, get the geometry nodes, which is now set to geometry nodes instead of what we had before, which was simply called nodes or simply called empty. Right now it's called geometry nodes. So previously, how you get things happening is go over to point distribution, and then you could easily even get things happening by firstly going over to point as well, and then getting your point instance. So I'm just going to drop that right here. And once you have that, typically before now, how this works was you select this object and you place that cube right there, and you start seeing some scatter. Right now, that is not the case. It doesn't work. So in case this was, this is what you're used to, it doesn't work. So there's a slight change of things. Now, what do I mean by this? If we go back and get a brand new scene right now, you would need to apply or bring in, what we have here. So for those who have probably seen the previous video where we talked about the whole particle nodes, you get the point now. So how this works is pretty similar to how the particle nodes work. So if you grab an object and make sure you have it selected, which is the point cloud, you will now find out that within the point cloud there is a brand new geometry node contrary to the particle nodes that we had before. So if you now move this all the way up, switch from here, geometry nodes, you have this. Now distributing this is also slightly different. Now how you can distribute this entails a couple of things. So let's take a look at some examples. So for this example, I'm just going to go ahead and select a part, and let's go over to where we have our object data, and I'm going to save these as a vertex group, and let's assign that so we can always come back to it, select this other one, click right here and assign. So we have two vertex group, right? So press your tab key, grab back onto this object that you have, and what we can do is simple. Now if we go back and do exactly the same thing, which has to do with the point distribution, and then we get to call up the point instancing and select this object and do the same thing, you still notice that nothing happens. Now why is because there is now a brand new object. Okay, so there's now a brand new object info which you can now use. So we can use this and connect this right over there. So with this object we can now select the grid, and now you can see that we have this happening. Now there are about 3 things which I need to show you. So one is this one. So let's proceed. Now remember those things that we saved earlier, all of this vertex stuff. Yep, you can now simply, let's grab that by hitting the Ctrl+C to copy that. Click on this one, and right here you can now paste this within the density and use that to drive this. So this now makes more sense because now you can have variations of one particular thing and you can drive a huge number of things with it. Now while we're speaking about things that you can drive, there's also something else that makes a lot of sense. Now remember that while we are looking at this, we have the object info. So what does that mean? That means that at any point in time you can now grab any object on your any object in your scene, and you can now use that object however you choose. So a very cool example is, let's grab, or let's take a look at Suzanne. We're just going to keep that there. Meanwhile, let's also select this cube and scale this cube just a bit lower like that, and position this right about that point. Okay, so that makes sense. So I'm also going to move Suzanne about this point so we can have her right there. So with Suzanne there, what we can do is select the main object, and remember that we already initiate the fact that we have this. We can now click over here and get the object. Now with this object we can now run Suzanne through here, and we can do a couple of other things with her. So one of them is we can choose to run a subdivision. So we can have a subdivision and we can run that subdivision right about that point. And yes, there is a join node. So we've talked about this join node in the previous video where we talked about how you can make procedural tables. So just in case you want to learn how to make attributes, make tables, and make things procedurally directly here in Blender with the geometry node, simply go over to the link in the description and check it out. So at this point, you can now see that we can actually do a couple of things with Suzanne. Of course, you can see that, you know, the main object is stored here, but then that is where your transform actually comes in very handy. So we can now hit the transform button, drop that one right over here, and we can use this to transform this however we choose. Now this is very interesting because at this point you can now have multiple stuff with just one node and do a lot of things with it. So all of these things that we're doing is just within this node, so we don't need to go ahead and create a node for Suzanne, create a node for this one, create a node for this other one. Nope, you don't need to do that. You can just simply do all of these things right here. So the brand new scene here, let's actually take a look at something that is quite interesting. So following up with what we just looked at, which has to do with you being able to bring in the object, all right? So you being able to bring in your object info, there's, you know, a couple of cool things that can now happen right here. So for that, what we need to do is just create a brand new node. And you notice that we don't even need to go ahead and start putting in all of that stuff, you know, go over here and start doing that. The reason why is because once you create a brand new node, there is definitely something that is there, owing to the fact that you have something selected. So if you have these other ones selected and you click a brand new node, automatically that happens, all right? And something else which is also interesting is once you go back and, you know, you don't have anything selected and you click on brand new node as well, the last object that you created is what, you know, the node is going to be applied to. So this one is pretty neat. Now with this here, I would like to address something that has to do with the edge split. So I think a couple of you guys have asked about edge split. What the hell is this? I will answer that now. So how this works is it's very, very simple. So for this one, just simply drop the edge split right here. And of course, you're not going to notice anything going on until you go ahead and throw in a subdivision. So once you throw in a subdivision and you do that, you notice it splits the edges of your object. So this is, you know, this is basically what this thing does. So you might find this, you know, rewarding, entertaining. You might find this useful. Yep, this is exactly what it does. And you can use this for approximately every other thing. So let's go in and bring out Suzanne one more time. So if I select this object right now and we have our nodes, we don't even need to bring Suzanne in anymore, as we can just reference the object. So we can hit the OBJ. So let's do that and reference the object right here, click right here, grab Suzanne, and then rewire this. And once you rewire that, you notice that we're having something happening there. The reason is because we're calling on the object without the node. And you probably also see that we have this one missing. Reason is because we are using the node to drive what we have here. And right now the input is not seeing anything to output. So we would simply select that and do a simple transform. So let's move Suzanne to about a point like so. And with that there, you can now start noticing, let's drop the subdivision down. So with this here, you can now start noticing that we have the edge split all around. So you can also control how much angle you want. So if you want this to be a bit, you know, smaller, you want this to be a bit tighter, you can now use this to split certain edges. So you can use this and create some amazing animation, as all of these are also keyframeable. So we've discussed a lot about some of these things, and you might want to go in and check these things out. Meanwhile, why this is happening is because, you know, they're doing the sprite fight right now, and all of these things that you're seeing here are being scattered by simply using the geometry nodes. And this is quite interesting. So for those who would like to get this, link is going to be in the description where you can go ahead and check it out. So tell me what you guys think about this one in the comment section. And of course, if you like this video or you learned something from it, you can go ahead and give it a like, and don't forget to share with a friend. And if you're new here, it's going to be amazing for you to hit the subscribe button and also turn on notifications so that you don't miss the next video or the next update. And until I see you guys again with a tutorial update, Free Friday, Tutorial Tuesday, tips and tricks, things like this. Peace.